Charleston White, a pronoun individual, has had a heart for helping the Black community, but yet has gone about it in very controversial ways. Has recently had a video that has gone around regarding his take on having children with Black women and why he's chosen not to do so. This could definitely get dangerous, but let's talk about that.
I wasn't fit to have no baby with no Black woman because she wouldn't allow you to have a loving, full relationship with your son. I've seen grown men weep and cry. I'm talking about gangster bad niggas, cause man, they just can't see. Because she got so much control over the baby. I watch niggas give up on life, man. I watch niggas put their head down in shame and walk away from the baby because she got too much control. It breaks a man's spirit and soul. Your son or your daughter looking at you and mama got all to say, and you supposed to be daddy, then you can't be the hero. Because mama played a villain and you can't come save your child from that villain. How you gonna be that hero? I kicked his door in and get my baby. I'm gonna be a hero.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I don't even really know where to start fully. He is such a interesting individual that I don't know much about. I'm not going to speak negatively on him at any point. But I do think how he's gone about addressing some very controversial statements have been off the wall. And this is one of them. So what are you, let's talk about that. What are your thoughts on this whole perspective?
Let's talk about that. So look, Coach Sean, here's the deal. I too am going to follow suit with you. I don't know Mr. White. I don't. But anytime you put anything out on social media, as we are, it is open to scrutiny. And it's interesting because you ran across that video and one that we chose to respond to and remark on. Again, our goal is to, first of all, inform people or get people to the point of understanding our worldview, which is a Christian worldview. His worldview is definitely one of society and culture and different things along those lines. But not knowing him, I want to be careful because I still want to, people are entitled to their opinions. He's entitled to his opinion. I think where the problem for me, Sean, that comes in with what Mr. White said is that he has taken every Black woman and decided that this is who they are. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm going out on a limb. I'm just saying I'm going to go into maybe a percentage of people that he's been dealing with that maybe have the same life experiences he has, maybe come from the same neighborhood he came from, maybe share some of the same ideologies and thoughts. Maybe they live a certain kind of lifestyle, and that has been his experience. What I would preferred that he said in this is that he's viewing it from the perspective of, I've found this to be more difficult, but to broadly state it, which I feel like he did in many instances, because, and at first he started with himself. And here's why I'm saying this. At first he started with himself, but then he said he's seen men give up on life. So then he started including He went beyond himself. If he'd have kept it to himself, I would have been fine with him stating that to himself, because then we just would have addressed him. But then he took it further than that. Now, I'm just going to be incredibly fair here. You could talk to men from all backgrounds who have been in relationships with women of all cultures, of various different cultures, like myself, and they'll tell you that those experiences exist there also. So to say alone, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure that's a good look, to be honest with you. I think it falls really, really short, and it's clickbait, man. That's the kind of stuff that people log on to see. Those are kind of things that people and that keeps you famous. It's kind of like when people who are well known start to become less well known, they go do something crazy so that they can become known again, so that people can see them again, right? Cut their hair, do something wild or whatever, whatnot. And it's like, if I didn't say something crazy enough now, wait till I say this part right here and you get a clip of this. Y'all gonna come for me. But there's people who say that all attention, good or bad, is attention, and that's what they're after. He did make some points. he did make some points that might be very legitimate. Again, for those men who've experienced this, he said he watched a men. He said it break their spirit and their soul. I do think that is very difficult. I will say, in all fairness, Sean, I don't think that it's fair that women have in fact used their children as weapons in the relationships that they've had with men. I don't. Absent, Sean, of abuse, verbally or emotionally or physically, I think you should allow your children to decide whether or not they want to be in relationship with their father. If that man cheated or whatever, I think we got to be careful of that, because, Sean, I think it tips over into something that we can go tit for tat on that, because most children, when parents aren't together, stay with mothers. So what if it was the mom who cheated and the kid stayed with her and the dad went on, but she's like, well, your dad left, he didn't stay, he wasn't. So I think you understand what I'm saying? We got to be really careful with that, because they can say, well, your dad was this, that, and another, and so on and so, he left you, even though it was me, he shouldn't have left you, because I've heard that scenario too, why he shouldn't have left you. So the thing that he said, I'm not a fan of it, to be honest with you. I'm just going to tell you, I'm not a big fan of it, not just because it's Black women, but because it's a sweeping statement that perhaps, again, maybe, in my opinion, shouldn't have been something that actually is said out on the internet, to tell you the truth. I just don't think that it should be out there on the internet. And so why are we doing it? Because, of course, right, it will be replayed on here, Lord knows how many times. But I want us to recognize that whatever we say, whatever we do has consequences, and it could be incredibly damaging. His kids might watch that one day. That clips live, stuff like that lives forever, even after you delete it, it's somewhere. One of his children might watch that or currently see that. I don't know how old his children are, or if he has children, I don't know. Or somebody connected to him who loves him deeply. And could you imagine him saying something like that, and they're looking at it going, man, like that's how you really feel about this? I think it's really damaging, man, to be quite honest with you. He said that the mom is a villain. I don't necessarily agree with that. Do I think that it's wrong when, again, mothers use their children as weapons between fathers and stuff like that? I do. And mothers know. They're very clear on the fact that kids 9 times out of 10 are going to choose you. That's period. And you get to paint that man into a monster. That's a fact. And he said he was going to be a hero, but I don't think that getting on saying what he said makes him heroic in any way, shape, or form. I think that he maybe should have a broader conversation about something like this, like we're attempting to do here, which brings us to what is the real issue, Sean, that exists for parents not allowing their or mothers not allowing their children to see their fathers, regardless of the race.
Yeah, I'm with that. Let me preface everything that I'm about to say. One, I am not a parent, nor do I desire to be a parent anytime soon. And at the same time, I do have, and I have been around enough family members who have perhaps been in situations that he's described, to where, from the outside looking in, it's really tough to see the children be used as pawns for whatever the mother is looking for, or whatever she is feeling like she wants to get revenge on towards the individual that she feels extremely slighted and betrayed by in some aspect, due to everything that's happened, from obviously the initial relationship to the pregnancy to the fallout of the relationship, so on and so forth. And obviously child support, all that stuff being involved, the individual's nowhere to be found. And so all this resentment that just builds up in the mother, and it really turns into a situation where now, because children's minds develop very early, they are very much spongy and receive information, and even so much repeat it when they go to other places and do other things. It's really challenging, because now the father is painted as the villain, as he described. And I feel like that's maybe more of where he was going. The mother has such a way of being able to control the narrative. She can spin it and not tell her own involvement in the situation and in the issue, and yet will have room to spit a message to the child that your dad is ain't ish, he ain't this, he ain't that, and you just like your daddy, and use it as an insult, you ugly just like your daddy, all that kind of stuff. And it paints a bad taste in the mouth of the child, to the point that when he grows older, when she grows older, not only do they not want anything to do with the father, but even if the father were to come and give his side of the story, it's not heard, it's not wanted, it's not received, not even because they had a legitimate choice in the fact of what was given, but because everything that was painted to them from their mother. I want to give just some perspectives that I've learned from people who have been in single parent homes that I have actually had the privilege of connecting with, conversing with, and maybe touching a little bit on this subject just to hear from their perspective. I find it extremely interesting that a lot of individuals that I've come across who have came from single parent homes, not only when they grow up do they have a very slow progression to connecting back to one of the parents that was not present, but there's a immediate understanding that if that parent were to ever step in and try to parent, it's immediately rejected. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want anything. I don't want any instruction from you. You weren't there. I'm not interested. Okay. So it's a very extreme dismissive perspective. Two, there's a very strong shift for this individual towards others in relationships. It's definitely a mother-father wound, where now there's either, maybe from the perspective of women, it's actually maybe very different. Some show it through independence. Okay. They're extremely independent, hyper independent, something that perhaps the spouse, or not the spouse, but the parent that remained, raised them up in to teach them to not depend on anyone for anything. That was a repeated message. That was something that was shown, whether through word and action or one of the other. And so it became something that was easily programmed into them. They have a level of authority in that. And so now you see it through how they work. You see it through how they manage their relationships, so on and so forth. Or you may see the very opposite, where a woman will do anything to get the attention of a man, to have a man in their life and be willing to give them anything and everything they want. If I give him this, he'll stay. If I give him that, he'll stay. I just want to be loved and seen. And it's a wound that has not been nurtured by a father that should have been a part of her life. And so she goes and finds the love she expects from her father through other men. And that's how a lot of that flows, from connection and relationship to relationship. And of course, there's a lot of nuances that vary between that. Perhaps there's another perspective as well, where there's not really a willingness to perhaps meet in the middle. And when I say meet in the middle, not just in the sense of trying to understand the perspective from the individual that was absent from their life, but also kind of connect with some of the issues and things that have been maybe inherited into them from the individual that is their parent. There's a quick neglection to some of that. Some people are more willing and more open to admit that they are a lot like the individual that wasn't in their life than rather not like them in a way. But there's also a lot of people who reject that quickly. I don't got nothing to do with them. And so it actually keeps perhaps a potential cycle going on and on and on as you move forward. Those are just a few highlights that I think are prevalent to this conversation, because all in all, I think it's really unfortunate that from even Charleston's perspective of him wanting to be a hero, at the same time, he's describing the dad to be painted as a villain, but yet he kind of comes back in the assumption of being a hero that she's the villain. So do you see how there's really a challenge there, to where both people have made the issue about themselves, about how they feel towards one another, and there's no actual desire to be considerate about the child, about how the child's going to perceive things, and wanting to put the child in the best perspective and condition possible to raise that child up to see things in a manner that's going to benefit them later on in life. And I think what we've done, again, I'm going to come back around to maybe again from a believer's perspective, and biblical, the war is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places. Like these things, we have decided to attack and go about making it an earthly, fleshly thing. And instead of being two individuals who want to come together to get to the root of the issue for the benefit of the child, we would rather bicker, argue, and put that child through years of court, and put that child through years of putting and standing on the stand and making testimonies and all that kind of stuff. You got to go here, got to go there. And it's not to say that because you had the child with them, that that's somebody that you have to be with. Please don't hear that. I'm not trying to insinuate that if you had a child with somebody, that that is somebody you should have married and you need to marry in order for the sake of the child, because that's not always the case. Because you may have slept with them, but that was not somebody you should have married. Okay. But I will say that there is a lot of like just inconsiderate actions that are taking place in the midst of all these things, as both people are trying to win something, and it comes from like a very egotistical, selfish desire to want to seem as the better individual in the eyes of the child, so that the child would make you the winner, the champion, the better parent, and you get bragging rights and all these other kinds of things.
I like that.
That goes so crazily deep, man. And it really sucks for a lot of these kids and people who will grow, and now there's wounds and things that they have to unpack and go to therapy for and all this kind of stuff. That, man, as a parent, if you were willing to just love your child like you say you do, I have a hard time believing that you would be willing to add additional traumas and traumatic experiences to that child's life because of the disagreement and separation and all those kinds of things you had with the individual. That, let's be honest now, I am a fan of honesty in this space. Let's just be real. Keep it a buck, a stack, a thou wow. You laid with them.
100%.
You made that choice. You slept with them. So please don't make this about how bad that person is, because it's 100%. Unfortunate that it took you allowing them to get between your legs and then leave you for you to see that. And
100%.
It's not to shame you, but at some point you've got to be willing to take accountability for your half of the story that you keep leaving out, trying to persuade the child that it's all on them and that you're the hero. Because when the full story gets told, man, the crazy, unimaginable weight that child feels, even as an adult, when they reconnect with the person that has been non-existent in their life, that's tough. And I think in a lot of ways, again, there's so much grace. I mean, we could talk about this for days on the nuances of things, because let's be honest, some of you have been in those positions because that's all you knew. Like, that's the environment you came from. That's the home you came from. That's what you saw in relationships, people in and out of the house and in and out your mama's bed, your daddy's bed. Everybody's got a new chick coming in around every holiday, every birthday. You were introduced as a child to the significant other that was just for the season in your parents' home, in your parents' life. And so you went through a lot of that. And so again, that's all you knew. And even though that's all you knew, there does come a point where we have to make a decision. If we want better for our life moving forward, there's more that's available for you to know and make different decisions. And I think a part of that is, okay, let me just, coming back to self-awareness, who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing. Let me get here so that way I can start making different decisions and say that curse or that generational issue ends with me, and it ends here, and I'm able to make different decisions. But to answer the initial issue, man, I think a lot of that comes from wounds, perhaps, that he's experienced. I don't know him. But anytime I hear generalizations, that's automatically where my mind goes. All of a sudden, all Black women, all women, all men are trash, no good, cheaters, liars, unavailable, and all these other kind of things, because you have been hurt by somebody that you wish you weren't hurt by, that has now made that perspective a coping mechanism to not process the pain appropriately, for you to live beyond it and actually find purpose amidst the pain that you're experiencing, so you come out on the other end better and not bitter. And I feel like this is one of those moments where a lot of that bitterness shows. And yes, it can be for clickbait. Yes, it can be for trending audios and to get your name out there. But not all attention is good attention, as you mentioned earlier. And it's really unfortunate, because it paints a bad perspective for Black women who actually want to honor the commitments they make, who
just do.
You know what I'm saying? Who just do. They do the right things. They are amazing mothers. They love their children. They are faithful and committed to their relationships, to their men, to their spouses, to their homes. They're faithful. It puts a bad taste in the mouth of people who are single and want to connect with other people, but because these messages are going around and not a whole lot of pushback is offered towards it, you just think because it has a lot of likes and views, it's got to be right. And I think I'm here to tell you that Charleston White, as controversial as he is, I can't get behind that. I cannot find myself supporting a message like that, because it's just not accurate in any kind of way. And it may be case by case, and I do think it does happen 1000%. But that's not all women, man.
Yeah, it's not, man. There's so much that we could talk about in here, but this will be the last thing that I'll say about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, you just can't lump all women into that category. There's a lot of women out there. This is why, too, I have an issue with people who use terms all men are dogs. Like, there's 7.9 billion people on the planet. No, the men that you know are dogs. And maybe your attachment style is to dogs. So, but not all men, right? Not all men are dogs, right? So the struggle that you're having is an internal thing. And so, those definitive sweeping statements like that, man, they always fall short of the reality of scenarios and situations. There are good women out there. There are good men out there. There are women who would never allow for their children to be separated from their father, whether them and their father didn't get along, or they decided to separate, divorce, whether it was through whatever means it was. They aren't together. Again, outside of any kind of abusive thing or anything along those lines, they're like, hey, that's your father. You get to decide and choose for yourself. I think that's appropriate and right. And so those women exist. They 1000% exist out there, as well as do the others, again, who he was making mention of. The issue that I take with him is that he said, I would never have a baby with a Black woman. That's just too far, man. And I think that's really a personal thing that you should say to yourself. Herein lies the fact that you said, because I don't know this guy, you said that he is really somebody who dabbles in talking about Black culture being on the come up. Well,
from what I've gotten from him, I feel that. From what I've gotten from him, he definitely has had a history and a portfolio, if you will, of just finding a way to connect with culture and trying to uplift it, while at the same time calling out a lot of the crazy stuff that's happened within culture. But at the same time, again, even with that message that he seems to kind of carry himself with, he has a lot of these controversial takes that are struggles for me.
And Sean, but also let me say this too. This goes for all people. I don't care what your cultural, racial makeup is. Mm-hmm. In every culture, every race, people do things differently. People do. Everybody's not hood. Just because you're Black, everybody's not hood. Let's just call it like it is, right? We're Black, but everybody's not hood. So for me, I feel like he's talking about a certain subset of people that he deals with, and that's not to say that it couldn't happen with somebody who was more intellectual, who's a doctor, a lawyer, or this, that, or the other. But it sounds like to me, again, the people who would be in his audience, who would be listening to him, who would be rocking with the kind of content that he makes or things that he says, I feel like that's a certain subset of our culture and not all of our culture, which again is the problem that I have with that, because I don't think that's true of everyone, right? To be honest with you, it's just not true of everyone. And that goes again for, white people, Hispanic people, people of all backgrounds, cultures, different things along those lines, races. You're going to have people who live differently in all those subsets of that culture. And to paint everybody with a broad stroke of a brush and say, I would never do this with a Black woman, man. First of all, we're always talking about on here, support Black business and stuff. Like you see a lot of that, stay in this, that, the other. Well, this is tearing down those who desire to say, I want to have a strong, healthy Black family. Well, this guy isn't helping y'all. I was going to put it out there. He's not helping you. Looking at it from the perspective I'm looking at it, he's not helping who you are. And then he's telling Black women to a certain degree too, you're just not valuable to me, especially if it comes to having to have children with you.
Yeah.
You're not worthy of my seed. You're not worthy of me, for me to have my DNA intermingle with yours and we make this baby. The messaging, man, is just horrible. It's just absolutely terrible, to be quite honest with you. And I think that it's really honestly, I wish this was something that he would have said or kept to himself and maybe said in private. But since he put it out there, we absolutely positively want to address it. And I want to end my final part with this brief statement here. All cultures, races, backgrounds have good and bad in them. And we just shouldn't paint broad pictures of people like that and say, I would never do this with this particular person. So,
yeah, I'm with you on that. I think the last few thoughts I'll have is, you never know the permissions your behaviors are giving. And as an individual who has actually experienced, again, with family members or people in my life that I've just seen, man, in terms of how you talk about somebody who isn't there but has some role in a person's life, whether they are present or not, it's basically by biological or identification, whatever it is. I think my message to parents, again, not a parent but being around enough of them in these situations, to say, you know get to the place where you're willing to deal with the issues that you have with this person in your own heart, and not be willing to allow that to come in between the relationship you carry with your child and allowing that child to have with the father that is present and desires to have a genuine relationship with that person. Now, again, there are so many things, abuse, all those kinds of things that if that's a situation you're in, of course, protect yourself, protect the child. Those are things that are required. Distance is required in a lot of those situations. But when it comes to basically watch how you speak about that individual around your kid. You know what I mean? Like, watch how you talk about them when they're not there. Because what I've seen is it gives that child permission to then approach that person who is their biological parent with such malice and disrespect and all those kinds of things, because of who they weren't to them when they needed them most. And it's not to neglect the feelings there, right? It's not to neglect the emotions that are experienced in the absence of that person in their life, and how much their life would have been better off if they were present, and to navigate through that. And now they have to unpack a lot of things. It's not to dismiss that, but I don't think it's fair to encourage that child through how you are talking about that other parent that isn't present. I don't think it's fair to encourage the disrespectful behavior, the malice, and all those kinds of things, and allow your child to have permission to do the same based on how you are introducing the conversation, how you're talking about them, and how you are leading the situation that in a lot of ways is really poor and negative. And so I think that's something to consider in this conversation. And then too, man, yeah, just generalizations, man. It's a way to cope with a wound, in my opinion. I don't know who he is or where he's at in his life. And I cannot say that he's wounded in any kind of way, but I just know from other places and other periods of pains that people go through, generalization is an easy way to then cope with what's happened, and then basically turn around and leave that entire situation and go to a different direction. And what happens is you carry toxic patterns from the generalizations you created to the place you're trying to go, and it repeats itself. I think it's important that instead of massaging the wound, you actually do the surgery to deal with the wound. And a part of doing the surgery is unpacking why you feel the way you do and dealing with those emotions, grieving it, all those kinds of things, as a means of walking away from it. Therapy, I'm a huge fan of that. Go through it if you need it. Counseling, coaching, get in touch with it if it's what's necessary for you to overcome these things, because these wounds carried over time, man, don't really help you. They hinder you. And it's not healthy for you to carry that on your weight, on your soul, on your mind, on your heart, and expect other people to just put up with you and say, well, this is just what I am because I didn't have a dad in my life. I didn't have this and I didn't have that in my life. Man, I think there is so much available to you to overcome that, to where that's not a wound you have to continue carrying. And this is the last thing I'll say, and I actually want to kind of toss it back to you in the form of a question, because you mentioned earlier just the understanding of, man, you know, the fact that there are a lot of women who have poor pickers in such a situation like this, and perhaps they're attracting the dogs that they're so quick to destroy, and vice versa for men to women. So what is a quick thought that you would give to somebody who's listening to this and finds himself in that position where they're addressing their picker, and maybe a lot of shame and guilt comes with it, but also trying to figure out, how do I learn to pick better? What do I need to do to put myself in a position to pick better? What would be some thoughts that you have to that?
Yeah, man, it's okay. Great question. I'll answer it quickly.
Yeah.
Here's the deal, John. This is the reality of it. Our life. So let me say this: we are the sum total of the decisions that we make. If we don't like the fruit hanging from our lives, then we have to change the seed that we're planting. The question becomes, is what type of seed am I planting? People will look for pathways to success. How do I become successful? How do you know what to do in this situation? How do you know? Well, I say this, Sean, in relationships. I say this in business. I say this in anything that you have to do, work, whatever it is that you have to do. Sean, it is imperative for us to first and foremost know who we are, know what we want, right? So know who you are, know who you want, know where you want to go. When you know these things, Sean, when you know these things and you stick to these things, because entwined in all that, right, are your values, right? The things that you care most about, the things that you love, and the way that you want to live your life. When you know this, when something is presented to you that's antithetical to those things, right? Your values, your vision, your purpose, who you are, right? Who fundamentally am I as a person? When something is presented to you, man, woman, car, job, any kind of opportunity, whatever it is, and you realize this goes against who I am, pay attention and always go back to your core values. This doesn't match who I am. So the answer to this really good opportunity, or maybe even great opportunity, is a no. I'm going to say no to who you are and to what it is that you are offering me, because it doesn't match who I am, where I'm going, and what I believe. I don't think it's hard, John. I don't think it's hard. People get lonely. People get desperate. People get tired of being by themselves. People get horny. Let's just call it what it is, right? And they get out there, and then you start to think to yourself, yo, I'm just going to do it because I'm just tired. I just needed this. Or he's like, man, shoot, I'm tired of running around. At least she here. At least she faithful. No. You've gone away from everything that you said you valued to now embracing things outside of your value system. And then you wake up one day and you're not happy with the fruit that's dangling from your tree. It's because of the seed you planted, not because anybody did something to you. It's all because you willingly walked away from your value system, and now you're paying a price for it. You are literally paying a price for leaving your values. Just know who you are. And when things come to you, you can say, does this match where I'm going and what I'm doing? And if it doesn't, then it's an easy no. It's just an easy no. Sean, the problem with loneliness that we talked about in previous video, the problem with loneliness is it lies to you. It lies to you and tells you that the next thing that comes is the best thing that will ever come. That's the problem with being lonely. The next thing will be the best thing because nothing else has come my way. So maybe this is my capacity. Maybe this is my lot. Maybe this is the best that I will ever do. Instead of realizing that waiting on something that's worth your time, that's worth you waiting on, that's worth you giving that type of time to, isn't going to come to you in a day. And it's not going to be easy. And it's something that's you'll see it and you're going to know it. These other things, you're just letting your guard down. You're just letting your guard down. So I say no to things that might be good, that maybe don't fit though, who I am, where I'm going, and what I'm doing. We have to not think that good always equates to purpose. We have to not think that money being offered always equates to purpose. We have to. There are people who take jobs and opportunities and stuff because they're like, man, they're paying me X, Y, and Z, and they're miserable every day because it's not their purpose. You make all the money you want to, but if you hate doing what you're doing, I want you to think about this real quick. I want everybody, if you're single out here, this is the last thing I'm gonna say. If you're single out here, both male and female, one of the questions I want you to ask yourself when you look at somebody and you've examined their lives is, can I have a family and children with this person? You got to really think through that. This person right here because once you start doing things with them that adults do, that married adults should do, you're risking that every time. Every time. That's the reality. So you really need to think through that. I don't care who they are. I don't care what the culture is, background, all that. You really need to think about this. Stick to your values. It's going to tell you yes or no all the time. And be able to be disciplined enough to walk away from something that's good, but doesn't necessarily meet you in purpose.
I love that. I hope you guys got a lot out of that and a lot out of this episode. For more, please like, subscribe, share this with a friend, turn on your post notifications so you know the next time that we're posting more pods and episodes. Of course, so much content coming your way from this page of Let's Talk About That podcast. We're dedicated to bring Christ to culture and engaging culture through trending topics, hopefully to bring you a clear insight to what it is that we're dealing with and discussing. All right. So from Coach D and your boy Coach Sean, until our next time meeting and speaking with one another, be easy and be breezy, my friends. Peace.
Peace.